Where does the wind come from? Does anybody know? Where does the wind come from before it starts to blow? On Saturday night, where does he hang his hat? Does anybody know where the wind is at? Where does the wind come from? Does anybody know?
Hey, welcome to Love with Strangers. I'm Wiley, and I am the person that runs this. And before we begin, I just want to offer a little bit of a content warning for anybody who's listening, because I'm going to talk a lot about grief and loss, the floods down in Texas, the recent passing of some notable people, and it's like it's going to be a hard listen, because I cry, and I actually cried in a moment I didn't expect myself to cry, which is kind of great in a lot of ways. So, if you find yourself struggling to get through this, you don't have to. And I thank you for listening all the way to the end. It's a really long one. Suggest listening with headphones. And then I'm going to add some content on the page also, like, that you can look at. So, take a breather, buckle up. We're going to go on a journey. And you're going to see where my brain leads us to these many different conclusions. But yeah, it's not an easy one, folks. All right. Sending all my love to you, and take care. Okay. Testing. I'm going to put this over, and we can edit when we're done. Hello, and welcome to Love with Strangers, a newsletter podcast, occasional treasure hunt through the preoccupied thoughts of my mind. And today I am going to present us with the theme Flooded. And I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. So part 1 is going to be people who I don't know but love are dying. This is where we will discuss the parasocial grief connection we have to social media influencers and the collective grief that binds us when they die. Part 2 is called Heart of the Hills. And this is going to be a tough one for me to talk about without crying in real time. But I'm going to go down summer camp memory lane and the sort of swelling grief that is ebbing and flowing with the destruction and death from the 4th of July floods in Kerr County, Texas. And part 3 is Dear Helen, an exhibition and container for the grief and limerence of relational endings and beginnings. And, okay, before I start, I'm going to say this. Love with Strangers is one of the many passion projects I dedicate my time to. I don't do it for money. Like many, I need a place to gather my thoughts and to make sense of the world around me. Love with Strangers is a reader-listener supported platform. It's free, and I won't turn down any donations or paid subscriptions if you want to help support what I do. So I welcome those. If you like the experience, please share Love with Strangers with your friends or a stranger, because after all, this is about building connection in the most unlikely places. I'm going to begin this with a rather long poem, and I'm going to warn you right now, because this is actually going to be a really long listen. I wrote this down for the first time, rather than just letting my brain run amok. I actually wrote this down, so I'm kind of like rereading and riffing off of things, the beats that I made. So, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to begin this with a poem by Franny Choi from her book of poetry titled The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On. and the poem is called How to Let Go of the World. There is a documentary about climate change called How to Let Go of the World, and Sam asks, should I jump off a building? Among a growing list of promises I can't make my friends, this weight will tether. You can come back up again. The faithfulness of gravity of morning sounds, if only you'll stay. When I walk into the street, it's almost as if it'll last. Smudged of a cooked orange pressed into the sky. The cars follow all their old lineages back and forth from shifts. Meanwhile, 3 teenagers pile rollicking onto the sidewalk. I don't know how to do it. Hold their faces in my hands and tell them what's waiting. How to teach any of us to follow this song into what dark? One evening, I turned a corner and panicked. A sudden flash in my rear view, teeth chattering into my highest throat, every nerve prepared for the acrid drip of cop talk until I realized it was no cruiser. It was the sky. The sky shocked with dying. I cried, and when I saw the photos of bleached reefs, later I had to cut the phrase out of every poem. Bleached reef, bleached reef. If a record skips, you bend low to greet it. You greet it with a cloth and your own good breath. When the Pyrex burst all over the stove, we stood still for a minute to let ourselves be rocked by the sound, the sudden natural disaster of our ruined dinner. To be safe, we turned to the ceiling and asked any spirits present to tuck themselves back into the drywall, and then went for bags and brooms, picked out the shards, the ghost knives hiding in the tiles for our heels. I should mention that my first love left Earth from a rooftop, though he didn't jump, or he jumped only the way mussels do on their way to sleep. I can watch the videos of brimstone eating California. I can listen to the sound of a boy describe how holding a line against fire might cut time off his sentence. I can hold his voice in my hands and whisper straight into it, but that doesn't make him here. I can love and love his arms, helping mine make something other than dirt, and watching that love bleed straight into the space between us, and then, of course, it falls into a tunnel and gone. You can come back up again. Run, and the sky will catch you in its 1,000 orange hands. You'll never land. I stalk the house, swatting the flies, thirsty for the sound of newspaper on exoskeleton, the satisfaction of a clean and bloody ending. When they're gone, I almost miss them. They fly out of my arms. I fly out of their arms. What's the German word for preemptively missing something so much you can't look at it? Literal translation: green, 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 and I hide my face. In Flint, I turn on the tap and out comes war wrapped in putrid cellophane. In Detroit, I flip the switch and boil war for tea. In Providence, I overwar the planets. War runs down my face in the theater's dark. I wade into a blanket of war and let its waves carry me out past the shoreline's certainty. In other words, I beach myself. In other words, I leach bleakly, breathe sleet, a wreath of it. I flinch at the leaves, anticipating their reek, the graves of reefs. I bleach and watch the chlorine slip clean from my teeth. I want to tether my friends to the rooftop railing the way we once pinned a blanket to the beach with shoes, books, bags of carrots, wine in a can. How we flexed and curled our toes until we found the damper sand, the soft homes of crabs below, but the wind won't stop coming. Orange and exoskeleton against our little shore. If only it had been a ghost that had shattered the glass. Some simple anger, some old fable we could soothe back to sleep with a few choice words and a handful of incense. Much worse than that, it was the heat. Much worse, the way molecules bend to the fact of it and break. I listened to those firefighters while in Hamtramck, I waged a much tinier war against the dust on my blinds. I wiped and wiped to rid the windows of it. In the forest, rot feeds. The earth drinks soot and makes it into new leaves. In other words, it's the plastic here that makes the dirt a problem. I bent low to greet it, dipped a cloth in water to approximate a tongue. Meanwhile, the light through the slats shocked my images into slices. When disaster comes, some of us will stand on the rooftop to address the ghosts. Some of us will hold the line. Some of us will look for the shards, run our tongues along the floor. I say when, like disaster hasn't come, isn't already growing in the yard. Do I have to run through the list? The firefighter prisoners, my friends, islands slowly swallowed, war in my faucet. Remember? Syrian civil war is in the name of a drought. The name of this hurricane is Exxon. Exxon, I shout. I can pull as many weeds as I want. I stalk the garden, pulling them, thirsty for the sound of their true names wrenching out of the soil. Do I have to say it? They fly out of my arms. I should mention that when my first love died, I already had a stack of poems about missing him. I want to say this prepped me for the widowhood to the world, etc. The truth, under the topmost sand is another darker layer, damp from the ocean's closeness. There were days I begged to be buried in it, cool, mutable grave, reprieve from the unrelenting sun, sun, sun. Among a growing list of other things that are unrelenting, teenagers piling, rollicking into the street, the shock of a citrus sky in midwinter, the way a phrase's shape can hook itself through your lip for weeks. Once, Sam walked around a whole day muttering, "Soul," I say, and he did and did. In lieu of proper translation for my grief, I say, green, 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 until it cools enough to lower myself into. Holding my love's face in my hands, I tell him I miss him. I say, I miss you like I miss the trees. By this I mean, look, the trees are here. Everyone's outside, darling. Green in my hand, ghost in the drywall. Everyone is waiting for us. I should mention that when my first love died, he was already dead, had already been on his way to the roof, on his way over its edge, and when he was there, he was here. By this logic, he is and was unrelentingly. In lieu of proximity to firefighters, in lieu of the ability to speak to airless language of ghosts, or to reverse the logic of molecules, or to force Exxon to call the hurricane by its rightful name, or to convince my friends not to launch themselves from the rooftops of every false promise made by every rotten idol, in lieu of all I can't do or undo, I hold the faces of the trees in my hands. I miss them, and miss them, until I fly out of grief's arms and the sky catches me in 1,000 orange hands. It catches me, and I stay there, suspended against the unrelenting orange. I stay there splayed and dying and shocking the siren sky. Part 1. People who I don't know, but love, are dying. And this is where I'll discuss the parasocial grief connection we have to social media influencers and famous people and the collective grief that binds us when they die. In the past few months, I've experienced my first parasocial deaths. And for those of you who don't know, parasocial relationships are defined as one-sided connections where an individual feels a sense of intimacy, friendship, or attachment to a media figure, celebrity, or fictional character, despite the relationship not being reciprocal. Specifically, I'm talking about the people I follow on Insta or TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but these are about the people who we follow on Insta or TikTok who we feel a deep kinship with, but we've never met in person. And being a person just like you and me, what happens when it's their turn to die? What happens when we witness the process of experiencing the end of life unfold daily in our feeds until one day a final post is shared? I began thinking about this quite recently. It all began when one of my favorite niche artists passed away from breast cancer. They were known online as Thistle Thistle, at Thistle Thistle. And Katie Greenwood Ross was known to many for their metalwork and costuming, but also for this like ethereal, magical sparkle of genuine humanity. And I mean this in sort of a loose way because this is kind of how I felt every time I liked one of her posts. I always looked forward to them posting because every time it was like a little fairy blessing, like a little fairy blessing with creative grace, and energy. And I don't know, I don't know how to describe it, but the thing is that I don't know Katie aside from Instagram, but when they announced their stage 4 cancer diagnosis, I felt like a friend had just told me. I actually cried, and I genuinely felt sad for her and her family. And I watched along her journey. Like, they would announce good days and bad days, progress and unrest, and then eventually announce the terminality of it all. And then I began slowly checking back in because the posts had become sparse, but I still wanted to be part of this person's transition journey. And oftentimes I would go through posts that were tagged, like that they were tagged in by friends and loved ones who were clearly preparing for the inevitable. And I would like gather information about where they were in the process. And then came that second to last post, saying goodbye to fans and followers, which was like a very sobering confirmation of what was to come. And then like reading the outpouring of support through comments, and like not just strangers' comments, like comments by people I know in person who I didn't even know was following this account. And it was like this electronic energy that was flooding the human experience, like building to this like momentum of one last energetic shift, and then comes that final post from a loved one that just says, Katie is passed, followed by a carousel of photographs in their memory. This was my first social media death, and I kept asking myself, like, what do I do with this grief? Am I crazy for calling a real friend to say I'm sad because this person who I felt so connected to but don't know and only knew through the internet is no longer? In some ways, it feels like these people behind the grid are already not real in a certain way. It's like they're kind of these abstract beings. And the best way I could think of this was like, it already feels like I'm grieving the ghosts of ghosts. So, it's no wonder that I really felt this like duality of a sucker punch, and also a wave of relief when I heard about the poet Andrea Gibson winning their way to the afterlife very recently. And while I loved their poetry before they were diagnosed with ovarian cancer, it was the poetry and reels and like videos of them reciting poetry that followed after the diagnosis that made me profoundly fall in love with them. And it wasn't just me, right? It wasn't just me. They showed all of us in real time one way to approach living through a terminal diagnosis, through authentic presence and the ineffable magic that is poetry. Poems tell the truth out loud. And they wrote this, and I'm going to read it out loud. It's been shared by so many people I know and follow, and it's just quite incredible. So this is Love Letter from the Afterlife. My love, I was so wrong. Dying is the opposite of leaving. When I left my body, I did not go away. That portal of light was not a portal to elsewhere, but a portal to here. I'm more here than I ever was before. I am more with you than I ever could imagined. So close, you look past me when wondering where I am. It's okay. I know that to be human is to be farsighted. But feel me now, walking the chambers of your heart, pressing my palms to the soft walls of your living. Why did no one tell us that to die is to be reincarnated in those we love while they are still alive? Ask me the altitude of heaven, and I will answer, how tall are you? In my back pocket is a love note with every word you wished you'd said. At night, I sit ecstatic at the loom, weaving forgiveness into our worldly regrets. All day, I listen to the radio of your memories. Yes, I know every secret you thought too dark to tell me, and love you more for everything you feared might make me love you less. When you cry, I guide your tears towards the garden of kisses I once planted on your cheek. So you know they're all perennials. Forgive me for not being able to weep with you. One day you will understand. One day you will know why I read the poetry of your grief to those waiting to be born, and they are all the more excited. There is nothing I want for now that we are so close. I open the curtain of your eyelids with my own smile every morning. I wish you could see the beauty of your spirit, to see the beauty your spirit is right now, making your pain, your deep-seated fears, playing musical chairs, laughing about how real they are not. My love, I want to sing it through the rafters of your bones. Dying is the opposite of leaving. I want to echo it through the corridor of your temples. I am more with you than I ever was before. Do you understand? It was me who beckoned the stranger who caught you in her arms when you forgot not to order for two at the coffee shop. It was me who was up all night gathering sunflowers into your chest the last day you feared you would never again wake up feeling light-hearted. I know it's hard to believe, but I promise it's the truth. I promise one day you will say it too. I can't believe I ever thought I could lose you. Need I say more? As I sit here writing this, people I know and people I follow are posting and reposting a collective celebration of Andrea's life. We're not alone in our grief. We are together in our love. We're brought deeper into community by it. And when I see a post by a person I don't know, I like it because we are now united in how Andrea's existence and struggle and grace touch so many of us, while also normalizing the experience of death and dying. All that while also embodying something that's really important to me and an entire community. Doing all of that while embodying queerness. And what is, I think about this all the time. It's like, what is queerness if not the corporal transition from one container to energetic wholeness? Part 2. Heart of the Hills. This is going to be a really tough one to talk about without crying in real time. But I'm going to try. I'm going to take a minute. Once a heart girl, always a heart girl. From 1988 to 1994, I attended Heart of the Hills summer camp in Hunt, Texas. And my first year there, I was 8 years old. My first year there was Jane Ragsdale's first year as camp director. And on July 4th, along with over 160 people, Jane was swept away by rising floodwaters trying to help others get to higher ground. I found Heart of the Hills. My parents found Heart of the Hills through one of my best friend's parents' friends who sent their daughter there. And if I haven't mentioned it, it's an all-girls summer camp in the hill country of Texas. And I was 8 years old when I went there with my best friend, Nicole, for 5 weeks. 5 weeks, yes, 5 weeks with no other contact with my family or the outside world aside from one phone call midterm and letter writing. I'd never been away from home before, aside from a singular overnight with family, like, or a babysitter or a sleepover with a friend. And if my memory serves me well, which is like, hard to say at age 45, I remember like this feeling of apprehension and anxiety of like not fitting in or knowing anyone aside from Nicole. And the sort of like fear that comes with it all, like of going away to a new place with a bunch of strangers and not knowing what to expect. But the beauty of summer camp, and if you've gone to camp, you'll understand this. And if you had a positive camp experience, you'll understand this. But, for me, the beauty of summer camp is how it transmutes fear into love, uncertainty into confidence, and aloneness into family. Heart of the Hills was my summer family for 7 years in a row. But just because I stopped going doesn't mean it ceases to be a place that I feel so closely related to, which is why this loss and the devastation from these floods feels so deeply personal. I'm going to try to paint a picture with words of just one momentary experience. And so imagine a circle of girls, ages 8 to 16, arms crisscrossed, holding hands, singing in unison at night in the dark, where you can barely see the person across from you. It's hot and humid, and you can hear the crickets and the cicadas, and the cicadas are deafening. The stars are a blanket of brilliance. The air is a perfume of grass and concrete, and the smell of algae rising off the waterfront being the banks of the Guadalupe River. And we've just come down from Tribe Hill, and yes, this is not politically correct. It's super appropriated and inappropriate. And this was the 80s and 90s, and Indigenous culture was deeply enmeshed in resort and camp culture, starting, like way, way, way back when, like 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And Heart of the Hills was a resort before it was incorporated into an all-girls camp. And the best way to kind of think of what it looked like is like, you remember the movie Dirty Dancing? Yeah, it was like it had that kind of vibe to it. But anyways, I digress. But so imagine that we girls have just come down from a tribal hill, and there are 2 tribes, to be exact, that made up Heart of the Hills, each with their own hill, which was a safe place for internal reflection and camaraderie and stories and, like singing and praising one another for like good deeds and challenging each other. It was just like it was like a time to sit around a campfire and talk. And then, coming down from the tribal hill, there's this like ecstatic, energetic swell. And what I mean by that is like, we've just come down from Tribal Hill and we are running into like 2 circles parallel to one another, with song leaders in the center, screaming as loud as we can, screaming to the point where our voices were either completely lost or incredibly hoarse. And like, these small girl bodies are like tired from the hike up and the hike down, and like we're doing all this running and singing, and oh my God, who knows what the fuck passengers in cars thought when they were driving down the road and they saw that. It's like hundreds of screaming children running in these circles. But anyways, here we were, and here we are at the end of the night, weaving one tribe through the other, because we were part of something much greater, and that was a sisterhood. And it's a long tradition of sisterhood that not only stretches back in time, and you feel that through tradition, standing there, but it also somehow stretches forward into the future, because you know that one day when you aren't there, there will be others like you standing there and experiencing the same thing. In my 7 years at summer camp, I learned, all the typical Texas summer camp things like horseback riding, swimming, riflery, arts and crafts, blah, blah, blah. It was through these activities, I learned to be courageous and independent, strong. I learned how to be a friend, how to make a new friend, how to be a leader, how to have faith in something greater that unites us all. Heart of the Hills was not specifically a Christian camp like Camp Mystic was, but it was very firmly rooted in sort of more traditional belief systems. And 7 years, it was 7 years of having Jane as my summer mom away from home. I mean, she was everyone's camp mom. She was everybody's summer mom, campers, counselors, staff alike. She was the guiding light. She guided us to be our most authentic selves, to be true to our nature. She led by example. She even taught us how to be strong women in a world so often dominated by men. I mean, she taught me how to properly greet someone with a firm handshake and looking them in the eye, repeating their name and saying, "Hi, blah, blah, blah. Nice to meet you. My name is Wiley Garcia." I mean, how cool is that? She taught us all how to seek out joy in little moments. I can still picture her standing on the waterfront playing her guitar and just smiling at all of us, singing songs that she's sung, thousands of times before. And yet singing it as if it's completely new. She really taught me how to appreciate the little things. She taught me how to lead with kindness. And I think the most important thing that summer camp left me with is this idea of centering people as whole beings, right? And whole beings that are not just singular. We are singular, but we are part of a greater whole together. And we're stronger together. So I bring this up because I am holding many complex feelings in this moment about the flooding and devastation that's rocked that area. This is a place I called home for 7 years, in a state that I called home for nearly 20, which was also a place that I was so eager to leave once I graduated high school. It's a place that holds this complex duality of belonging, but also knowing I didn't really want to belong there. And, here's what I know is that I may have lived in Vermont longer than anywhere else on this earth, but my heart still knows that it's a part of Texas. Part of it is just belongs to Texas. And through this heartbreak, it's as if this younger part of me has come forward to remind me that I am who I am because of Heart of the Hills. To use a really metaphor steeped concept, it's that I learned to dive fearlessly into these murky blue-green waters of the Guadalupe. I learned how to synchronize my paddle strokes with a crew of 10 war canoeists, to look upon the serenity of the water as this spiritual guide. And yet, I don't know. I thought I would have better organized my thoughts all around the things that I wanted to say here, but it's difficult when we already hold so much around the death of millions around the world right now, right? There's so much going on. I think it's important to note that grief is holographic. I think of it as holographic, and it's a spectrum. It's like a fourth dimensional space that emerges and disappears. It doesn't follow a timeline. There are no convenient pauses. It just is. and that sometimes we can experience the weight of what's happening around the world in real time or abstractly, and then be forced to confront a newer version of it closer to home. One doesn't cancel out the other. I think maybe we just get better at knowing when to accept it washing over us and when to lean into the small joys when it wanes. What I know for sure is that Jane Ragsdale will never be forgotten, and that memories of summer camp will be forever cherished, and that Jane lives on through the memories of campers that are sharing their experiences online, and reaching out to one another and checking in. And, there's this wonderful song. I don't know if I'm going to sing it, but I used to sing it to my kids when they were babies because it was one of the camp songs that I absolutely loved. And it just brought so much goodness, to me, and peace. And so I'm going to speak it as if it's a poem. I'm not going to sing it. It's called For All We Know. And for those of you Heart of the Hills girls who might be listening to this, it was song 100 in the songbook. For all we know, we may never meet again. Our camp will grow, making memories sweet again. We'll not say goodbye, we'll never be parted. We'll join hands and hearts for the friendships we started. Our camping days seem to only be a dream. They come and go like the ripples on a stream. Heart of the Hills will remain like the tune of an old refrain and live in our hearts again, for all we know. Part 3, Dear Helen, an exhibition and container for the grief and limerence of relational endings and embracing new beginnings. I mean, what else are we talking about here, people? So, have you ever become so obsessed with an object as a placeholder for the love you have that has nowhere to go, that you gave it a name and turned it into an artistic muse? Yeah, okay, cool. So, limerence is kind of like a hot term right now that creatives are glomming onto. It's a beautiful word, for one. It looks great written down, and the sound of it is just gorgeous. Limerence. But for those of us who actually experience it, it's a certain kind of hell. A quick Google search will tell you that limerence is a state of mind characterized by intense, involuntary infatuation with another person, often involving obsessive thoughts and a strong desire for reciprocation. It's not the same as love, but rather a very specific type of romantic obsession that can be all-consuming. The experience is often described as a powerful, involuntary longing for another person, marked by intrusive thoughts and heightened emotional dependence on their actions and responses. If it sounds stalkerish and unhinged, that's because it can be if you haven't done the internal work to process what's driving the intrusive thoughts and or how to navigate the overwhelm that can come from trying to suppress it. Limerence, in my mind here, is just an old-fashioned version of our modern-day parasocial relationship. Ha 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 ha. You see the connection I made here to part 1? I love it when I do that. So what does this have to do with a tree named Helen? Well, 3 years ago, I was navigating the end of a marriage, and we had actually moved into our first house way before this, maybe 5 years before. And it was at a pivotal time when I think we were maybe experiencing one of the many iterations of unhappiness, but we were trying to make it work because that's what some people do. And honestly, no judgment here. Things take the time they take. And I have nothing but good feelings, for the person that I was going through this with. We were both in it. We were in it separately, but also in it together. And there was this tree in a field in the yard from the place that we had just bought, and it was offset from the mountains in the distance. And I remember thinking, this is Helen. She's going to be my tree that will help me find my own roots in this new place I'm calling home. But she kind of also became this like subliminal container for a whole myriad of feelings that I couldn't put words to. And because I couldn't like find the words to like say to her or to like honor how I was feeling, I decided that I could just photograph her every day and post it online, like, you know, every other like elder millennial, you know, would do if they were creative, you know, make an Instagram page for like Offset Helen. And by the way, the page is private now and you can't see it. And I'm kind of happy with that. But the thing is that anytime emotional like discomfort rose up within me, I would like go photograph Helen. If there was an intrusive thought about self-worth, I'd go to Helen. If I was pining like over a, you know, person that doesn't really exist, Helen. Difficulty in my own relational being, Helen's there. And over time, Helen sort of became this stand-in for unconditional stability and my own existential curiosity. This, of course, like, you know, naturally would lead me to thinking about the way landscapes, both internal and external, change over time. And what I discovered, and, you know, like kind of already knew, was that where Helen stands, there was once an ocean. And there was even, you know, a beluga whale that was found when they were working, like first putting in the railroad. I can't remember what year it is now, but way back when. That was like, you know, there were whale bones here. There are fish skeletons and underwater things, fossils, all left, you know, somewhere out here in these fields. And, you know, thinking about this sort of gave me this, like, it's maybe a little macabre, but it was like also really peaceful. It made me realize that like one day, you know, like once it was ocean, but one day it'll be something else. And like one day when Helen is no longer here and neither am I or you or our children or like, you know, whatever, it's gonna like things will turn into something else. And I take comfort in knowing that things are in constant, perpetual versions of change. And for me, there's like hope in knowing that this is something that none of us will escape in our lifetimes. We will at some point experience change, good or bad. But usually, like, I kind of think that change kind of like the good and bad of change goes hand in hand. You know, so like I think about all of this, right? And I'm like, you know, obsessing this like limerence of life onto Helen, and I would do what any artist would. I start making work about it. And I created a show that's up at ATM Gallery, the gallery that I co-direct. And the show is called Dear Helen, A Requiem for Disappearing Landscapes. And you can learn all about it on my website, or the ATM website. But here's the takeaway. And this is why this show matters. And this is why I'm bringing it up in relation to the other two parts and themes I've addressed. It's that 30 minutes before this show, Dear Helen, opened, my mom called to tell me about the floods in Texas and about Jane dying and about all of the kids missing and the families searching and hurting. And I have this question that I keep like kind of holding close, but it's like, how do we hold sudden grief and keep going? You know, it's hard. It's like, how do we hold sudden grief and open your show and greet your friends and visitors and stuff like that? Like, it's hard. And that wasn't the only thing that was going on. You know, like I tried to hold some honest space for myself because something that you also probably didn't know is that a person who I'm still particularly very fond of, she and I decided no longer to pursue a romantic relationship a couple days before that opening. And, that a dear friend and colleague died of a sudden heart attack a month before. And that, my story really isn't any more special than anyone else's. It's just a different iteration of this, this change, these changes, these things, these occurrences, these like life truths, right? People break up, people die, heart attacks happen, floods, it's just, these are universal things that we all live with. You see, change never ends. It comes in different iterations. It holds no specific timeline or unspoken contract of waiting between visits. In its versatility, it can bring both joy and sadness, hope and destruction, finality and uncertainty. And, people write songs about it. They make art, they write books, they dedicate their lives to understanding it and helping others navigate it. I just happen to be talking about it right now. And often when I'm experiencing something like this, I'll paint and I'll listen to Mark Maron interview people, or most recently I was listening to, this wasn't a Mark Maron thing, but I was listening to this death doula talk about energy transference upon death. But it was so fucking cool. I'll step outside at night and look at the stars and remind myself about something as obscure as quantum entanglement, that I could be here and you could be there and we can have some sort of instantaneous moment of sharing an idea or something that connects us. And then of course sometimes, I make playlists. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, or Gen X or millennial, I don't know, born in 1980, wherever that lies. But we made playlists, we made cassette tapes, mixtapes, now they're called playlists, to help me out of it. So, this isn't I think the reason why I'm talking about these things isn't so much to offer you a roadmap of how to go through it. Or even necessarily offer myself a roadmap of what's happening right now. But I think it's asking a larger question, which is this, which is what do you do with the love you have that has nowhere to go? And I want you to consider that love that has nowhere to go, that is a sweet spot. That is that's maybe the most powerful thing. So postscript. This took a turn in a direction I did not expect, but I kind of knew that it was going to go there, and I thank you for following along with me. My postscript is about my love for swimming. And at Heart of the Hills, I did a lot of swimming. I learned how to dive. I took synchronized swimming classes. I swam on the teams. I got ribbons for swimming, placing first in breaststroke in my division. I learned how to do back dive. I mean, I loved the water. I didn't learn how to swim there per se, but I learned to love swimming there. So in regards to all of this stuff that I've just been talking about, I just want to say that we're not meant to live in this sweet spot of grief long term, because it's way too intense. I can talk about it and write about it all I want, but for me right now, the best place to sort of hide my tears, regulate my flooded nervous system, and work through all of this heaviness is in the lap pool at the YMCA. Underwater, with synchronized breaths and strokes, that endless chatter in my brain stops. My body feels weightless, flying through this cool liquid. I tire myself out and I feel like myself again at the end of it. It took me a really long time to get back in the water. I think I'd been away from the pool for about 5 years. And like, I used to swim. I swam through both of my pregnancies with my kids. I always swam around times I was working on art shows. Swimming for me was just something that I did. It was like a form of self-care, but also just like the greatest gift for mental health. And like, I'm really glad to be back in the water, because I know that no matter how hard the emotions or, how wet the invisible tears are, I always emerge from a swimming session feeling peace. And in this day and age, peace and serenity is such a privileged experience. The cost for the serenity is courage and dedication and a constant accountability. And I'm so here for that. And it's not easy. It's definitely, something that I have to continue to work towards. So thank you for joining me on this journey. And I'll be back in touch with the next session.
84. Peace, I ask of thee, O river. Peace, peace, peace. When I learn to live serenely, cares will cease. From the hills I gather courage, visions of the day to be, strength to lead and faith to follow.
So that's all I got. I want to just say that the music that is spliced in here comes from the Ragsdale Family Camps. It actually comes from the Heart of the Hills website under the alumni tab. There's songs from the songbook. Give them the credit for that. And the images that I'm posting below all of this are pictures of me and friends from summer camp. There's some memes that I captured about Andrea Gibson, and then just about grief. I'm going to also include the national hotline for help. I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's there. I've got kids running it around. So anyhow, I will post all of that information there. And and then I think that's all. I think I'm covering most of my bases here. Again, if you're interested in supporting this, I just want you to know that it's reader supported, listener supported. It is technically free, but any small donation, either Venmo or through the subscription of the Substack page, is helpful. Okay. And I'll also add a link to my most recent playlist that I've been listening to work through stuff. Okay. Take care. Have a lovely week. And do all the things that you want to do. Hug the people that need to be hugged. Tell yourself you love yourself. Tell the people that you love them. And fight fascists. That's it. Take care. Bye.
I wanna linger a little longer here with you. Oh, what a perfect night. It doesn't seem quite right that this should be our last with you. And come September, we will remember our camping days and friendships true. And as the years go by, I'll think of you and sigh. This is good night and not goodbye.